What's going on, YouTube? So, as somebody who makes Elder Scrolls Online content, but also really loves the Elder Scrolls Online universe, the Fallout universe, the Doom universe, etc., I'm also recommended those videos on YouTube. And the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, something crazy must be going on because people were telling me that Bethesda was in chaos. They're cooked. They're admitting defeat. But then I kind of looked into it. And just to quickly get my biases out of the way, I just do want to say that I love Bethesda's universes. I love their IPs. I think that they've done a fantastic job, even with the recent Fallout TV series. I think that their games have stood the test of time. If I said name a game that came out in 2006 besides Oblivion, that would probably be a very difficult question. Name another game that came out in 2011 besides Skyrim. It's probably a difficult question for most people just because of how monumental those games were. And that's the same for Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, their TV show. Let's not forget about Doom, which was a fantastic game. Really, the only slip up with Doom was the Doom movie with The Rock, but we could give them a pass for that. And if you're curious what has spawned all of these thumbnails, all of these long discussions, it's because a former senior game designer for Bethesda stated in an interview that was over an hour long that the Elder Scrolls 6 meeting fans' expectations is going to be almost impossible to achieve. And then he followed that up by saying Elder Scrolls 6 is undoubtedly going to be an amazing game, but it's going to be compared to all previous games that Bethesda has ever made. And what's crazy is I actually read this article a month ago and thought, yeah, that makes sense. I actually talked about this on stream where I said, it's going to be really hard to follow up on Skyrim because Skyrim has a 96 on Metacritic. That puts it as the joint 16 best game ever released across any platform ever. That's a pretty high bar to follow up. And that came from Oblivion, which was also the trendsetter that put console RPG gaming on the map. And before that was Morrowind, which put, RPG gaming also on the map and really started a trend that would create the Elder Scrolls universe in the way that we see it today. And so when I saw the article put in people's thumbnails that Bethesda expects players to be dissatisfied, I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And then I realized that it was referencing the same interview that I had already seen, and I thought, well, firstly, this guy is a former Bethesda employee. So how can a former Bethesda employee who's not working on a project speak to the satisfaction levels of a player base? And then the second thing is that even if he could, would you expect them to give a different answer? If somebody asked to me very broadly at my work, or I want you to imagine if somebody asked you this at your work, one, will you make everybody happy? And two, is everybody going to be satisfied with your work always, all the time? The answer is probably not, regardless of what you do. You could be a firefighter and people will be upset as to where you park your fire truck. And that is a real story from when I had a fire inside of my apartment complex and there were people outside complaining that the road was closed. And when you look at all of the games that Bethesda has released, obviously you've got the Elder Scrolls series, the Fallout series, but they've also have Dishonored 1 and 2. They have other good games like the Doom franchise. They have the Wolfenstein franchise. There's obviously some more niche ones, like Where's Waldo and stuff on here too. But overall, they have put tons of effort into a lot of the games that they've released, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a game that, quote-unquote, flopped or reviewed very poorly. And I'm not talking about low 80s or even mid-70s on Metacritic. I'm talking about, flopped, like 40s, 50s, and 60s on Metacritic. And you may be wondering to yourself, Jake, why exactly did you make this YouTube video? And the answer is actually really straightforward, and it's because I want to see more interviews. I want to see active game developers, not former game developers giving an interview. But if you're a Bethesda employee right now, this is all that you're going to be seeing across articles, YouTube thumbnails, and all over the place. Why would you ever be allowed to then sit down to talk about Elder Scrolls 6? If an hour and 10-minute interview could be chopped down to a quarter of a sentence, where all he said in that quarter of a sentence is almost impossible, there's no reason that you're ever going to be allowed to ever do an interview until after the game has been released. So we are doing a disservice to ourselves by taking everything that they're saying out of context, when in reality, they gave one of the most fair responses that you could ever give. And the sad thing is we now live in a society where everything is one of two things when it comes to anything journalistically, content creation-wise, reviewing-wise. It's either absolutely fantastic or absolutely horrible. They're either perfect, fantastic, fun, or it's at the other end where it's absolutely dreadful, woeful, and they're cooked, they're in chaos, they're going to dissatisfy us, they're expecting us to hate it. When in reality, if you took a step back, a Bethesda employee has made no comment. No Bethesda currently working on Elder Scrolls 6 has said anything. Only people who have worked on previous Bethesda titles came out and said it's going to be hard to meet the expectations, which is true. I think everybody can agree to that. When Fallout 4 was about to come out, a lot of people said Fallout 4 following up on New Vegas is going to be one of the hardest follow-ups to ever do in the gaming industry. And how many of you guys enjoyed Fallout 4? I enjoyed Fallout 4. Not to say that it was perfect. There were some changes that I would have made. I didn't necessarily like the power armor changes. The quest line was kind of spoiled for me, so it was a little dissatisfied with that. And there was way too many settlements for me to go and save. Thanks, Preston Garvey. But other than that, I really enjoyed the game. I can think of some very fond memories I had, some fond quests that I had. And overall, I just had a positive experience with it. And I want to give you guys a quick example, because when I played Fallout New Vegas, I was told that it was the greatest RPG game to ever have been released in our lifetimes ever across any platform. And so when I was playing it, I was like, this is a great game, but I don't know if I would say this is the greatest, game that had ever been released ever. And the reason for that is my expectations were the highest that they ever could have been. I equate it to when you go to a restaurant and you spend a ton of money. Your expectations are through the roof. You want something to be absolutely fantastic. And even if it is fantastic, it has met your expectations. It's impossible almost to exceed your expectations in that scenario. But if you go and you spend, a little bit of money on food, or if you go to like a street stand or something and you're paying a little bit of money and the food is absolutely incredible, you'll probably have a more positive experience in that second scenario versus the first one. So most of the time, they want to taper expectations versus try to embolden them. And as somebody who absolutely loves the Elder Scrolls Online, loves Fallout 76, and wants nothing more than to know when and where and what's going on with Elder Scrolls 6, all of the juicy details about it, we are going about it the total wrong way. If we're taking a quarter of a sentence by a former Bethesda employee, now associating it with a current Bethesda employee, not just that, but a current Bethesda employee who's working on Elder Scrolls 6, then we're stretching it to the entirety of Bethesda as a whole, and then we're saying that all of Bethesda expects us to be dissatisfied. We've made like 4 or 5 leaps in our thinking that are just completely unreasonable. And if you're a Bethesda actual PR person right now, social media manager, or something along the likes, you're going to be looking at this and thinking, ooh, we probably shouldn't talk a whole lot about this until we know exactly what we're going to say. It's going to be probably very diplomatically written, and they're probably going to talk to us like they're a politician who's running for re-election and not actually going to give us really fun, cool, unique details. And as somebody who's spoken to game developers, when you talk to them in person and not during these formalized interviews, you can get so much more fun information. And I wish that we could take that back to actual interviews. That way, people who aren't involved in these one-on-one conversations could see, the passion, the ideas, the different things that they're trying without this hyper, we have to analyze every word that they say and look to see if we can either push that to the positive extreme or to the negative extreme. And so thank you to everyone that stuck around to the end of this video. I just wanted to say that we're not going to attach a very hyperbolic thumbnail or title to this, even though it will cause it to get less views realistically, because fairness and credibility is important. And I hope that if you're in conversations with your friends and they're talking about this, because likely a lot of you guys play Bethesda games if you're watching this, a lot of your friends play Bethesda games and they say, oh my gosh, I can't believe Bethesda expects us to be disappointed. You could be like, well, that's not actually what was said really at all. It was a former Bethesda employee, and he said that it's just going to be hard to really meet expectations, is really what he was saying. And that's a fair assessment. And then you could just move on with your day, and you don't need to have these big, long conversations, back and forth, investigative summaries. And hopefully, as we get away from these hyperbolic thumbnails and titles and articles and rage bait that you see across the industry. I watch the Premier League soccer. You would not believe the type of articles that are recommended to me on Facebook and the YouTube thumbnails that are recommended to me on YouTube. Hopefully we can get away from this, always clicking on things that make us angry or things that we just universally agree with, even though it's probably untrue. And we can get back to a state of more of an equilibrium And hopefully, we will see more content released from developers directly, and they won't have to talk to us like they're diplomats, and we're not turning them basically into pseudo politicians where they're too scared to speak their mind. Because for any of you who have ever talked to a developer at TwitchCon or any sort of convention, you'll know that they have a lot of passion. They like to talk. They're very excited about the things that they work on, but they don't ever want to be caught in a situation where a quarter of a sentence is causing all of this hoopla. So hopefully we can get away from that, go back to normal. So thank you guys one last time for watching. This has been Jake, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.